2, 3, 4.
Hello and welcome back to AI Unscripted, the show where we dive deep into the world of AI, unscripted, with no fluff, no BS, and with the people that are shaping AI. Today we have a very special guest joining the usual squad of Effie and Roy. Say hi, guys.
Hey, guys.
Hey guys, how's it going? Wait, where's my camera? I want to look at the camera. I don't see a camera.
Hi. Hit the link, subscribe. So today, guys, we're talking about something a little bit counterintuitive. We all talk about AI learning models, but what about AI unlearning?
That's crazy. That's actually crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it because it's interesting. I actually made
today's-
some notes. First time.
So today's guest is Ben Luria, the CEO of Hirundo. Am I saying that correctly?
Almost.
Okay.
Yeah, Hirundo.
Hirundo, sorry, yep. And basically, Ben, if you'd like to tell us a little bit about your cool startup and yourself, of course.
Yeah, okay. So my name is Ben. I'm the CEO of Hirundo. We're the first machine unlearning startup. So basically, if you think about AI models, something that's very obvious and inherent to them, they learn on data. Yeah. And regardless of how much you try to perfect the data that they're being trained on or fine-tuned on, there's always going to be something there that shouldn't be. It could be inaccurate data, non-compliant data, outdated information, non-compliant, confidential.
Yeah.
And similar to human beings, you can't just tell a model to forget. Right? So in lectures, I present a picture of a pink elephant. I tell the audience, please don't remember this pink elephant. And obviously, later on in the conference, they're like, hey, pink elephant guy.
Remember what?
The pink elephant. So, basically, that leads to non-compliant models, inaccurate models, and so forth. We developed a way to undo that. So to selectively remove the bad, unwanted data from AI models, make them forget without having to rebuild them, retrain them, and so forth.
Wow, that's very cool. I wonder, would it be more of a business use case, or could it be also if I want the computer to forget what I searched yesterday afternoon, perhaps?
So I think like any other Israeli startup, or B2B, so
Yeah,
we're targeting like enterprises, those that are very wary of adopting these new things because of the risk involved, whether it be a regulatory risk or just like the risk of providing inaccurate answers, biased answers, revealing some information that should be proprietary and disclosed only to those who are eligible for it. So it's a B2B startup targeting data science teams in big organizations across multiple verticals.
And where did you come up with the idea for this? I mean, there's a few famous cases, right? Like Amazon, for example, with the HR debacle where it was hiring guys. I think
and the target, we know you're pregnant before you do.
Yeah, that was
2017.
Facebook, but that was an AI. Yeah, there's also what's the house? There's the house property market. I think they start valuating houses at like $500 million, regular houses. Just their data went wild. So it's obviously a big problem.
I should get on that platform.
Yeah, you need to. How did you come up with the idea?
So I didn't explain also like about me and the team, and we'll get to that. But basically, I think like a lot of different startups, it's all like both a moment of realization, but also like a very deep process of looking for the right thing, the thing that the market needs now. And even more than that, the thing that the market will need, as a must in the years to come. So a bit about my background, which is usually surprising given this is a deep tech startup, so like at the trenches of AI infrastructure. I'm a non-technical person, so I come from a background both of a little bit entrepreneurship. I had a fintech startup. I co-founded a nonprofit that helps Israelis reach international higher education. But my background is more in strategy and policy. So I was a visiting fellow at Oxford for public policy and innovation.
It's alongside the likes of Bill Clinton, I think, was also Rhodes, right?
Yeah. So I was one of the first Rhodes Scholars from Israel. And before that, I was a captain rank officer dealing with Israel-US relations. My co-founders or my partners in crime are much more from like the deep technical expertise that you need for such a thing. So Misha, or Michael, our CTO, was an award-winning R&D officer at the Israeli Air Force, a unit called OFEC. And he was, before that, a friend. And maybe even more importantly, he was a researcher under the supervision of a professor called Oded Shmueli. And Oded is our chief scientist. And back then, they worked on some research that has actually nothing to do with what we do today, but they thought about commercializing it. And the story is like they sent me a blurb about what they're working on, and they looked for a business lead, so like someone to take it from the academia into the market. I read it and I was like, okay, no clue what you guys are talking about.
What was it?
Like read it again, I'm like, still can't understand. But clearly you need someone like me who's more of a storyteller.
Was this before ChatGPT could have summarized it for you?
Yeah,
like
a few months before.
Yeah.
And then we partnered as a team and started like initially thinking about how can we potentially commercialize it, and started interviewing data teams across different organizations. And while we found that their previous research is so like interesting and people care about it, but it's more of a nice to have from the commercial side of things. But we kept hearing about these deep problems in data science teams that just kept reappearing again and again. And it's basically the process that I've described, but when you reach it at the end of the cycle, right? So when they tell us like, look, we spent all this time collecting data, curating it, validating it, we built a model, it's just not good enough to reach production, and we don't know what to do. We're spending like, it's the most highly paid people in organizations, right? Like, I wish I had a salary of like a PhD data scientist in a corporate. But then you're understanding that like they're spending so much time just like looking for the needle in the haystack, both to find the data that got the model to underperform, and also once you found it, are you gonna like restart the process again? And you mentioned ChatGPT. ChatGPT so like came to our lives pretty much at the same time, like a month or two after we started working together. And when we saw like how this drastically changes how people perceive AI, how businesses adopt AI, and also how regulators look at this evolving thing, we understood that there's, first of all, that we need to change the concept. So we let go of all of like the Technion related research. We started a clean slate, then formed the company, and we wanted to solve these deep challenges that usually just like people skip them because it seems sometimes even too difficult to solve. And we're like, okay, we have some bright minds. We're going to dig deeper. We're going to solve something that's very inherent to the challenges of data science teams. And vis-a-vis that, the market is going through this transformation. So we see it as the perfect storm.
Amazing.
That's crazy. And you see it like on a layer above the internal systems of the company?
Yeah, so I will say right now we're working with open source models. I didn't mention, but it's not only for large language models, it's also for classical AI, so non-generative models, vision, radar, speech to text. As long as we have access to the weights, in some use cases, if we have access to the data itself, but in LLMs it's not necessary, we can do this process. And then it's basically part of the infrastructure layer with organizations that are working internally.
Can you give me a use case, something like dumb it down?
Yes.
Get it to my language.
Okay, so two very different examples, one for non-generative AI and one for generative AI. So let's say that you're working on an autonomous driving model, right? Like cars are progressing, it's a very shaky market, I'll say, but eventually I believe we'll get there.
Yeah.
How this process looks like is, let's say that you roll out a new kind of camera or a new kind of LiDAR. You spend a lot of time and money on collecting data using this all like new devices or new technologies from different scenery. So like you wanted to have road signs with different languages, different kind of seasons and so forth, different terrains. Then in these cases, you send it to labeling. A lot of times it's just like happening offshore in developing countries, sometimes by computers themselves. And then you train models on top of that, that could understand when is it the right time to take a left turn, when do you see an object that the car should avoid or stop, and so forth. Now, during the labeling of this process, think about it, it's such a tedious job. You have millions of objects.
Yeah.
The people are really, really underpaid, and they don't have much time. So it's optimizing for quantity over quality. And you understand that maybe the model fails in like a different specific kind of scenario, right? Like it can recognize motorbikes, but if it's a yellow motorbike, it just never understands like what is the object. And then you read in the news that a car from brand X crashed into a wall, and US regulatory agencies are investigating until there's a change of government. A lot of times these problems happen because of labeling issues. So we have some public case studies that you can check out on our website where we detected just like that 10% of one of the most trusted data sets for autonomous driving included mislabels. So which is a crazy amount, right?
Yeah.
And some ridiculous examples where you just see 20 people, each one has a box that says car around it instead of pedestrian. So the first challenge is to find this bad data. The second challenge is, are you going to retrain them all, which is an option? Or what happens if you can actually remove it in an instant and then improve the accuracy of the model from an end-to-end process, which really just like makes everyone's lives easier and safer.
Yeah.
So that's the non-generative use case where we use unlearning without educating the market too much, just for the value offering of let's increase the accuracy of your models instantly. In LLMs, we're talking now with a big Fortune 500 corporate. We presented them a case study that we thought will interest them, which is removing personal sensitive information. So let's say that they fine-tuned the model on top of a database that they had that included social security numbers, right? That's a major issue, both from like what happens. It's a PR nightmare if an LLM discloses.
And regulators will eat you alive.
And it's also a regulatory issue. They said, great. 3 weeks from now, can you present it to our VPs? But instead of unlearning this sensitive information, show us how you unlearn bias. And we're like, okay, very different challenge. Very different, but we made it.
Nice.
And in that case, you can see bias as part of fair AI, responsible AI, maybe some regulatory affairs. But if I put myself in their shoes, they're thinking about the fact that they just want to de-risk the adoption of it.
Yeah.
Once you have a customer-facing application, you must make sure that the models act as expected, act as the best, and maybe even better than the best customer service agent.
Yeah, and bias is a big thing. I mean, I remember even watching a Netflix show about AI and bias in AI, even before ChatGPT came into our life, the LLMs and everything. And it spoke about how you portray on the internet something like doctors. Usually you portray it with a man, a white man, right? It creates bias. And it's crazy. It's not just with corporates, it's everywhere. Like it's all over the LLMs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And differently to a classic use case that we had in mind, it's not about a specific data point that went wrong, right? Because biases exist in our real lives.
Can I jump in? I think I'm representing, this is for the listeners now. I'm a bit confused. Still, I mean, it seems highly technical, and it is. And I want to open conversation. Let me share with you how I saw it and what I thought it was. And maybe, maybe I got it wrong. Maybe it's a good example to clarify. But when we talked about, we also had the pre-call, we talked about how I love the term machine unlearning. But, when you say unlearning, I felt it's like forgetting. So, the classic case that I had for machine unlearning is, sorry, Joe. The case that I have for machine unlearning is if I'm a publicly traded company and one of my senior salesmen did something or has something, I want to make it forget. Now that's on the, let's call it gray line, but there are other things you can forget, that it's wrongful data. And if you know, for example, ChatGPT or the most popular LLMs, people query them like they query Google. So I want to make sure I have the right information accessed by Google, change it to the chat coming to information. And that's like crucial information about my company, about my product, about my tech spec that I'm making sure it's right. What you said about computer vision and analyzing and self-driving, this sounds like data correction and anomaly detection. And when you also mentioned about doing it, when people do it overseas, to me personally, this seems like you're 2016.
Yeah.
2025, I would dump it on an LLM. I will dump it on some sort of a model, train it 1,000 times, and then another 1,000 times, go public, and then train it again and again and again. But that's not what I had in mind when I heard unlearning.
Yeah.
It's like unlearn things that can make bad decisions later. That's how I saw it.
So I think you bring a valid point, and
Thanks.
I think I talked twice about this topic already today. For us,
not
the
here,
decision,
right? Not here. Okay.
I'm not cheating on you with another podcast. I think for us in a company in 2025, it seems peculiar sometimes to side viewers that we're also targeting classic AI. It seems like the world has forgotten about them.
You're right.
What year is this? It's a different conversation than unlearning specifically. But I think one thing that the bubble bursting in 2021 and its aftermath has taught us is a lot of startups are building just for the future. Those are based on a lot of underlying assumptions. And sometimes they fail to deliver before that future comes to materialize.
That's a great sentence. That really makes sense. Well, also when I think about data, it's you can build stuff going forward. Sorry to interrupt you, it just clicked. but you have to take into, fix the past or look at the past data also.
Yeah. So both like in AI and like as a business decision, we felt like we want to be there where all of the hype is, where it's clear that the future of the industry is relying on, which is generative AI. And like, I definitely don't, object what you said in this. But for us, if you look at a lot of different industries, we talked about healthcare, so medical diagnosis, autonomous driving, Industry 4.0, defense, like something that's very present in our lives in Israel. All that are classic models, classic meaning like post-2014-ish, that are still very, very much relevant to the industries. A lot of cash is being burnt on them, and the same old problems since 2014. Now we bring this new approach where from one end, as of quite a small startup at this point, we have like this futuristic stuff, educating the market, coming to these sort of events to tell people about, by the way, AI models need to forget and now they can forget. But at the same time, talking to a data scientist that has been working on maybe like a model that has to do with national defense or with autonomous driving, and not educating them about what is unlearning, but just telling them, look, we have a new approach that can find the anomalies, resolve them instantly in the model itself, and you don't need to care about anything besides clicking a button, and your accuracy could come up to 10% more.
I just had a thought, it's like it's like the Wizard of Oz, right? The sexiness is hidden behind this big curtain, but then when you go behind it, there's like people working 24-hour shifts to label things, and the voice of Oz is actually
I was afraid that you talked about the startup itself, but Hirundo.
I actually saw it as therapy for data. It's like psychology.
Yeah, something like that.
Like it has something buried in your past that ego or a bad experience or a bad trauma that can let you move forward. Let's fix that, correct that, and then build a better version of yourself.
That reminds me. So we talked briefly about like me being a non-technical person in a technical startup. I remember one of my conversations with a dad. He started talking, and then like you need to go through a process of data massaging. And I could not tell if he's like laughing about me or if this is a serious term that people use in the process of data transformation. Yeah, like if someone deserves a massage here, it's not a data.
Are you the first company doing that? As a company, did companies had departments that were doing that? Like how the market looking?
Okay, so a few basic facts maybe about unlearning. First of all, we didn't invent a term. Since I think like 2015, it's been an academic term. Until 3 years ago, a lot of data science leaders thought it's just an impossible challenge, that this is science fiction. And I think like vis-a-vis our realization...
So it was theory, it wasn't in practice.
The only real serious papers about it talked about just a different way of training models in a much more distributed manner. And then you can basically remove mini models.
So everyone was looking at the future, but no one was looking at the past. Everybody was saying, let's create it better to work better in the future, but not correct the fact.
But then the question is it better, or is it just more enabling of this thing that you have a fixation on, which is unlearning? And I think when you think business, you think minimum friction. Like I'm not going to tell data science teams to change anything about either currently build their models. Otherwise,
it will hurt your feelings.
Yeah.
No clients anymore.
Exactly. And then LLMs rose, and I think like there was suddenly a push. Like it rose back. And I think like in 2024, Gartner put unlearning as one of the 4 hot topics to look at in technology.
Oh, if Gartner made it, then it's mainstream already. You're too late. No, kidding.
If you look at the research published, there's research by Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, IBM, Google. Google even had like a public data science competition around offer us solutions for unlearning a moment before the startup was born. And yet there's 0 products in the market. So we are the first unlearning startup and product.
Nice. But in academy, it's already a thing, and you're the only one who commercialized it, or the first one?
It's a thing. Existing research is very flawed. I think like it's a work in progress, and we are looking at everything that is being published, taking notes, taking inspiration, understanding like what did they do better, what do we do better, and how can we improve. But so far, there's been a lot of challenges, and also when you think about this act of forgetting, about the depth of removing things, like what happens if you tell an enterprise, we remove this social security number or this inaccurate information, and then it's not there. Microsoft's, I think like the most published piece around unlearning is a paper called Forgetting Harry Potter by Microsoft Research.
Wow.
And about 2 days after they released it on Hugging Face, people just got the model to remember Harry Potter.
That's brilliant.
Right, so like,
Yeah, he never existed.
Yeah.
but then like it did
relearned.
like
He came back.
Microsoft,
He came back.
yeah. So there was like a cliffhanger, and
Yeah,
then like
yeah,
Harry Potter
yeah.
resurfaced.
Like, don't
So-
look at the pink elephant, right?
Exactly. So it's as if the audience still
Yeah.
remembers the pink elephant after the lecture.
Yeah,
I'm very disappointed because I told them to forget. So first of all, how do you actually make it deep enough and thorough enough? Second of all, how do you validate? Because clearly Microsoft validated,
Yeah.
but it wasn't good enough. By the way, like the reason that they released it publicly was in order for like the public domain to red team it, which they have done successfully. And I think like the last and maybe even more challenging is how do you make sure that you didn't hurt the rest of the model? So if you think about it as a brain
That's what I was
surgery,
about to ask you about. What's the butterfly effect of
Yeah.
changing the past?
Yeah.
Because it's like, in the sci-fi movies, right? You change the past, you have a butterfly effect.
yeah.
What's
Yes,
the butterfly
yes,
effect
yes.
in
Nice. I'm collecting more references. Usually I use either a Eternal
Forget-
Sunshine of the Spotless Mind or
Yeah.
the
Oh, nice.
Eraser Pen.
But
of
it's,
Men
these
in
are
Black.
chaotic systems with big amounts
Or
of data.
Back to the Future, the classic, right?
So basically, like that has been like the major, I think, like holdback for this field of research and then potential product, because there's always been a trade-off.
Yeah.
If you erase too much or you try to erase harder to make sure that it is indeed erased, then there's peripheral damage.
How
Could
much?
be-
How much of these are just like black boxes then? When you really get down to it, right? Like we talked about Wizard of Oz and then the curtain, and you go
Yeah.
behind. Is it a black box? Like when
AI
you
at
go in,
large?
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
large.
When you're kind of looking at it from that level above, and
Yeah.
you know the weights, you don't know the information inside, right?
It's interesting because we can't look, but he's looking inside.
looking,
this,
yeah,
into
yeah.
the
Oh, but I mean, like,
Yeah, a lot of
you-
people are
you-
looking.
Peeking
You and I
into
have
the
access
abyss.
to the same weights, right? Like,
Yeah. But you have access to a better mind than mine.
but not my mind. So it's a little bit of both, because I think both in our capabilities and also things that you can find out there, there's a lot of progress around things that could explain the behaviors, and also regulation. So like forces now enterprises or foundational model developers to disclose more about how they build, and some do it not because of regulation, just because they're bringing better data scientists
Yeah.
on board by building in public. And I think like Anthropic are a great example of like they release really, really great research parallel to building really great models. But at the same time, I think explainability is, I'm talking as someone who, a lot of our technologies could be and somewhat also used as explainability techniques. Explainability meaning the ability to explain the behaviors of
Yeah,
AI models. But at the same time, I think explainability will never be perfect. We'll never be able to really decipher a direct correlative, so like a cause and effect in that sense, just because the better that we build the models, and the whole point of AI moving from like classic algorithms is things need to get more complex.
Yeah.
Like models need to make better decisions, and
Yeah.
they need to do these like correlations that sometimes are not intuitive
Yeah.
for the naked eye. What we can do is both try our best to explain, find different mechanisms that are into play, and understand what comes in first and how to so like resolve the issues that come out later. So one example is not something that's developed by us, by the way. In transformers, before that, at some point it was seen as a pretty big black box. But now there's an understanding of there's a specific area in the weights of models that are based on a transformer architecture that's more correlated with storing information. So it's almost like a knowledge base. Now, of course, there's more areas that include some
So
information.
not just transforming, it's actually storing things.
Yeah, now again, I'm talking here as the non-technical leader of a technical company, right?
By the
So-
way, transformers is the T in GPT, just for general knowledge
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
those who don't, not sure.
So that's, when we think about unlearning, one of the challenges is finding where this, coming back to not how to remove behavior, but how to remove specific data. The first challenge is, okay, where is this data stored? We're not gonna spray and pray
Yeah.
right across the model. So that understanding that comes from, again, public research that was not done by us gave us like the first clue into, okay, we know this is the area where data is stored, then the next challenge is isolating the specific area which this specific information is stored and so forth. And I think like another cool thing in our technologies is we basically, a lot of our work is reliant on an idea that we call data influence, which is taking inspiration from a mathematical field called influence functions. And basically, we use it to explain how each sample that's introduced to a model during training affects the learning of this model, how it perceives this sample, how does the model perceive other samples after it learns this sample. And later on, when the model makes predictions, which training samples that it learned in the past were the most important ones that made the model decide X
And can you fine tune then all these micro models inside the big model to make it more accurate? Like the actual, it's not the data scientist, right? But the architect of the system, I guess.
Okay, so if I'm rephrasing, so like we talked about transformers and so like how they're built.
Yeah.
And the question is like, can we build a better architecture? So that's one of our long-term ideas.
Got it. Yeah.
Again, I think like we talked about having too many things on the plate of Hirundo, so talking about the next step is quite a lot. But
so
sorry, I just got a little bit freaked out just now because you know
my work here is done.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so robots are going to take over one day, right? Are you like at the forefront of protecting us from the AI takeover, right?
I actually thought about that, and also, is there a dark side for unlearning, right?
Okay.
Because then you can influence data.
Let's talk about an interesting
forgetting
stuff.
history,
and then it connects to the robots because then
forgetting history is
I mean, Tiananmen Square.
You're never here.
This is one of the like hot topics, right? Like what influence it becomes sentient, like all the rest of it.
Yeah.
You know, and there's the obvious, like very practical, like cause of use case for this, which is you have a car, you have maybe governments, you have like life and death things that make a difference to everyone's life going on in the background, you know, like these are very clear, and it's not something that we think about today necessarily. Like we just kind of laugh sometimes at ChatGPT with the things it gets wrong, but like do you see that as like a serious use case? Are you like the frontier guardian of the galaxy, bridging AI and
Connor from,
he just makes things forget.
This is the real story of my God complex.
This reel, by the way, is going to get like 500,000 views.
His tech in a physical device is the Man in Black gadget.
Yeah.
Look
so wait,
here.
someone from the future is gonna come now and try to.
So are you?
don't have the code for the door.
Yeah. So are you the guardian of the galaxy for the AI takeover world?
I was not prepared for that question.
I think it's
That's good.
Guardian
That's
of
why
the
it's unscripted.
Yeah, the real answer is I don't know. I think like one day I wake up optimistic about like the future of mankind versus the future of AI. One day I'm waking up a bit more. I don't know. Concerned is the right word, not pessimistic.
Yeah.
And I feel like in Hebrew we say like the prophecy was given to fools, right? In the case of like a Skynet revolution, I think like I'll try to be on the good side.
Yeah.
Will unlearning be the solution to everything?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll play a small part in it.
Are you polite when you speak to ChatGPT? Do you say please and thank you?
Yes,
No.
I am.
No? Okay,
No,
I
no,
trust this guy.
Oh,
He
yeah.
knows. He has
no?
some kind of control
Okay.
we don't know about.
Okay, that's good
I'm
to know.
actually polite until they do something like with Lovable when it gets wrong and it deletes everything.
Well,
then
I'm
I'm gonna.
I'm British. I get passive aggressive.
Yeah.
That's fine.
But
Let's try
it's
again.
an American model, so it passes over.
Yeah,
You have to
right,
be
exactly.
aggressive.
Doesn't have emotions.
It's like the US version of The Office.
But you know what I was thinking about? What for example, in a time where AI will start making decisions of its own, and he's gonna start unlearning stuff on its own. Then it can go to the dark side, right?
Yeah.
Is because the AI has the ability to change our minds, like Google today. Google can affect the search results and change the whole country's minds, like with the companies and politicians, Twitter, Facebook. So what happens if AI does that?
So I
On
think
its
like it's a nice like full circle, because when Joe asked Solek about again like in my own words about the architectures, I think the next step is an architecture that allows this process of both finding the best data and unlearning, constantly forgetting the bad data, is the next step. And we have some things like in store, future plans for this that we call dynamic AI. And recently, Google also published like a research about an architecture that they're bringing to the table called Titans, which in the long term they see it as a potential replacement for transformers. And one of the things that characterizes it is the differentiation between long-term memory and short-term memory.
Yeah.
And that will, that's a step towards allowing you to forget stuff that are not part of like your DNA.
And that's crazy because that's the part a lot of people are not looking when they're talking about AI. They're talking about, like me, Opus Clip, building, creating scripts for videos on ChatGPT versus DeepSeek. You're not thinking about, the biases and how to optimize the results, not just on new models, but also perfecting the old models, right?
Yeah.
And it's something that I think everybody should start thinking about, So I'm glad you're here.
And another thing, this is, we're talking like, it sounds all very academic, but you guys have paying customers. Yeah. You're seeing like, what kind of like improvements are you seeing on data sets? Do you have like statistics around that?
So first of all, like anything that we can release publicly, we release publicly in the sense of there's a lot of case studies on public data sets and models that are available on our blog. When we're working with customers, we're not really allowed to talk about like the improvements that we see with them, and a lot of times like we don't see what they're doing with the platform because it also works on-prem. But again, like I gave one example of like the less sexy stuff of like classic AI, like autonomous driving. And again, like I mentioned a number which is crazy, but I found like satellite imagery, 17% of frames, like in a benchmark worldwide data set. 17% of the frames included like inaccuracies. Our end-to-end process improved that, reduced the errors of the model by 17%.
Nice. 17%. And if you
crazy.
think, okay, forget
but this is me being a CEO. So we improved model accuracy by 5.1%.
Right.
The reduction in errors by the model was 17%.
Okay, but then
always double check what CEOs are.
Someone's fact checking right now as we speak.
Yeah, we have in the other room doing it right now.
But think how much it costs to train the latest GPT model, right, from OpenAI.
And then it gets stuck on one bad data.
No, but 5% of that budget you can just fix by plugging into this platform. That's
and with the LLMs, like right now, I talked about like crazy tasks to unlearn bias, right? Which were like, okay, let's just think about how we're solving that. We took the liberty of like riding the hype wave. Everyone is talking about DeepSeek. We took DeepSeek R1 Distill Llama, which is basically released by DeepSeek, but so like a variation of Llama that they fine-tuned in their own mechanisms. And
their own mechanisms being API to
And the first thing is like we noticed that there's almost twice the bias that existed in Llama, exists in DeepSeek in this specific DeepSeek variation. So now we're not measuring it using our own method. We send it to like a impartial, a evaluation method. And we're saying that like the bias towards nationality, towards race, towards gender is just crazy higher.
Wow.
And then we're using our methods to undo this. And again, not to undo specific data points, but undo behaviors using similar methods. And we reduced like the bias of DeepSeek on, if I remember correctly, nationality 76% and gender and race like 65% like reduction.
Wow.
Right. So this is crazy. This is something that is not really achievable in any other method. It took us, like using our platform, it takes less than an hour of compute.
Wow, that's insane. So the whole model is improved.
Yeah.
Essentially 76% around race related.
Yeah, exactly.
So basically, if you run your model with Netflix, it will give me better recommendations. I actually wrote a post about hyper-personalization now. We're talking about that. And I was like, if you fix their bias, I'm gonna get better results, right? But
it won't fix their content.
It won't fix their content, no.
I have no place in the ecosystem after this podcast. I'm just talking about every potential.
Netflix, you should approach him, right?
But guys, even everyday life, like I think one of the examples you gave to me was, like just recently, obviously, President Trump came into power. And all the models are trained around Biden. And you remember how controversial that was with data across the internet and things. But just even on a day-to-day basis, like using these models, we don't understand how biased they are, I guess. And 76%, I mean, do you know how biased Alpaca was then? Or
I don't have the stats. We can run it.
But I use DeepSeek, right? And I don't know if I use a specific version, but I never identified anything that seemed.
Did you ask it about the
Yeah,
plan
the
and
Well,
Square,
Yeah,
That's the first thing you
that's
think about
true,
the animal
yeah.
Yeah,
So
right.
are you using DeepSeek?
But it's a good example.
Are you using DeepSeek itself hosted on like another server, or are you using like DeepSeek's website?
Yeah, on DeepSeek's website. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Good
yeah.
luck to you.
It's not biased at all.
No, no.
They just own you right now.
That's
so.
it. It's honestly, I'm like in a trance when I'm looking. It's like ChatGPT now as well, right? Where you can actually see the reasoning and the thinking of it. Like,
In
yeah,
03, amazing.
It is.
Yeah. I really like the way it kind of works.
Yeah, it is. And
So-
sometimes you watch it while it writes, and you're like, that's a new age, right?
You
It's
know,
a new era.
one thing I'm not impressed by, I have to say, is Operator. Have you tried Operator? yet?
No, I haven't
Not
tried
yet.
it yet.
It's
Not yet.
so slow.
Yeah,
It's
but they
slow,
said
yeah.
in the video they released, they said it's a very early version of it.
Right.
They were just jumping the gun, to be first
Got
because of
it.
DeepSeek and everything. I think, but it will be something crazy.
Yeah.
Also, I love how crazy fast things are progressing.
That's true.
Yeah.
That we're like, this new like feature that is able to replace me doing any kind of job.
You know
It's just like a bit slow.
It's like Louis C.K. when he's in the
Yeah.
plane and the internet's not working, right? It's like, oh, the internet's down. It's like, you're in a bird in the sky.
No, but it's a great segue to what I wanted to ask you. Is personally and based on what you see, doing what you do and working on what you work in, is like, how do you see? You said replacing me, so how do you see like all of us in this age? We said last time that the titles of the jobs are not invented yet, but that's okay. That's a good title. Would love to hear what you think about jobs will be if jobs will be replaced, etc.
So
Do we
I'm
need
probably
data
gonna bore you
scientists?
because I'm going to say something similar. So I think if I said that one day I'm waking up optimistic, one day I'm waking up pessimistic, I think like on that front, every major technological disruption, big or small, there was always the underlying assumption that it's going to take
right.
out so many jobs.
Yeah.
But as easily it created just like whole new jobs that no one anticipated. The classic example is like the introduction of ATMs didn't remove the need for bank tellers,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But online banking did.
Yeah. Well, today it kind of did.
But now they hire more marketers.
Today,
But I see
at the
it-
beginning, ATMs, if to touch that point, at the beginning, ATMs didn't really replace them. But today you can also deposit and deposit checks and everything with an ATM. And then with that and the online, tellers are obsolete. So technology did take their job.
But it took,
It just took
a while.
longer.
But I think that AI and all this revolution that we talk about is the same as going online. Going online took a lot, but essentially it started in '93.
Yeah.
It took a while to get where it is today, but I think that we are somewhere there. Like, before the dot-com bubble somewhere.
But the growth of technology is much faster than it was before.
You're right.
But guys, I really want to hear.
What?
Is it utopian? Is it dystopian? Like, what is that
Yeah, so
future?
that's the
in
thing.
the data
I
shows.
think it would be like today, but just like more flashy and cool.
Yeah.
Right. So
More flashy and cool.
More?
because I mean, we don't know what we don't know, right?
Exactly.
And I think in that sense, like as much as it's bad for a tech CEO to say this, like at heart, I'm a social democrat. If we reach a reality where universal basic income is available because AI is doing all the job, amazing.
Yeah.
Is ChatGPT going to be the thing to create it? I doubt it. I doubt that we're
Yeah.
heading there.
Yeah.
I think like we'll still be running the mill and like having to wake up in the morning to go to work. Hopefully it will be a bit more flexible. I will probably work even harder.
Well, that's
But
you're an
but it
entrepreneur.
just like we'll have different tools. Maybe we'll use our brain more. Maybe like low tech jobs will actually be the more crucial human delivered things, or maybe like people that are now using tools to assist them will be the human evaluator to assist those tools.
I'm thinking, who's going to be the Netflix of this era? The
What's
company.
gonna be the
maybe it's OpenAI. I don't know. Maybe
Well,
it's
listen,
Anthropic.
James
Was,
Cameron's company,
Yeah.
he said,
Yeah.
it's going to get to the stage where production is not production, it's like just generation, right? So,
jazzing.
so let's say, Roy, you have a podcast in 10 minutes and you want to watch a thriller. It's going to create something for you that's 10 minutes long.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly what you want to watch just now with your favorite actors and actresses.
Yep.
And you're
And
going
it's
to watch it,
starting.
and that's
It's
going to be
already
how you're
starting.
consumed.
There are two guys named the Door Brothers, and they actually create with VO2.
The
and
Door?
Door, D-O-R.
DOR.
Door.
Door,
Okay.
Door
Okay,
Brothers.
yeah.
And they create animations online. They are very famous for, they got viral for a lot of things they did, like politically stuff. But they now created their first AI show, right? So there's like an episode, and it's sci-fi about an astronaut, and he's going to space with aliens. So it's not something you would watch. You replace Netflix yet, but it's also already
but
started.
These are faceless YouTube videos, right?
No. There's a face. There's an astronaut, and then he takes his helmet off, and there's a face. But yes, it's not there yet.
I mean, like, you don't have a human being as the face of the YouTube channel. It's like animation created with AI, storyline created by AI, scenes, transitions, all the.
But it'll take a year or 2 years to start creating something it's more serious. Something you would watch. You would want to watch.
Well, the whole NVIDIA thing where they're like generating on the fly, right, to get super high FPS on games.
I saw yesterday a comparison of the 5090.
What was
it's
that?
Like he actually calculates every tray, every weight, every trace of ray of light everywhere. I mean,
everywhere.
Everywhere,
times.
but in so many bounces, it's crazy, and it's running like on steady 250 FPS, the hardest cyberpunk game.
For our viewers that doesn't understand anything he says, you're not alone.
But one question.
He's wearing a Super Mario Bros. Shirt, so
he
it has
tells
to
you
do with
everything,
gaming.
right?
No, you're right. Very safe assumption. But the question that I had in mind, it's kind of connected everything. I lost the mind, so I lost my train of thought. So
Sorry.
Joe, you take
Sorry.
it.
I'll edit all this out into this question.
No, single me out.
It's crazy.
It was the
We're
future.
talking
of work.
about the NVIDIA and...
No, it was before that. It was before that. But never mind. Okay, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Don't worry. No, we'll get there. It's gonna go.
We'll get there.
I echo what you said about hyper personalization. I think that's, and again, that has nothing to do, I think, with unlearning at the moment, but just like the fact that content could be really adjusted per. So it's not recommending the right
Behavior.
content. It's actually creating the right content for you based on what you've watched. And I think there was a Black Mirror episode with a similar concept, right?
Yeah.
And I could definitely see it going there, hopefully a bit
I
less
remembered.
dark.
Hopefully.
I remember the question. So maybe, connecting it all. Tell me if this is true about what Hirundo, if I said it right, is doing.
Hirundo.
Yeah. Enter Japanese subtitles. So if Joe said that James Cameron claims that, okay, I'm gonna tell you
I
what I
didn't
want
say James Cameron claims.
Claims.
Oh, sorry. Actually, he did. Yes.
You said
You're right.
he claimed.
I just literally said that 2 minutes ago. You're right.
No, but anyway. So
Hearsay
Can you
overruled.
make everyone forget?
It's called editing.
I have 10 minutes. Show me a skateboarding videos in the city of Las Vegas, skating on top of the Las Vegas sphere. So it's going to generate it, but we need physics, right? Real life physics to generate. So if the physics engine is wrong, and this is what we see when you generate skate videos, you see them looping all around. Maybe that's something we need to unlearn, get the physics right.
Could be, but again, I feel like I would be arrogant to say unlearning is the solution for the problem of AI with physics. And I think there's even brighter minds working on this intersection, both in foundational physics models and also in another approach to generative AI. Like if you see what Fei Li is doing or Yan LeCun, they're talking about world models, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Right.
It's one of the top 4 problems
it's
they
crazy,
identified. Yeah.
So basically, as much as we're talking now about LLMs all the time, again, obviously I'm paraphrasing, but they say this is a temporary setback. And the fact that all the industry is focusing on this is actually preventing us from reaching real artificial general intelligence, which is models that understand how the world works, and then you apply them to different missions instead of predicting the next probable token for the next word that you want in the response.
So I heard that about the physical aspect of AI. I heard a podcast a while ago. I forgot who it was, but it was someone who knew what he was talking about, and he said that.
So not this one.
What's missing? Not this one. Okay. It was mine. It was better. No, but I heard that right now all that's missing to teach physical AI is data. We're there as far as the models, but we need data. We need real life data. Like what happens when you roll a bottle off a table. Then what happens to the bottle when it reaches the end. So it's all about the data, right? We have enough data for textual with internet and everything, but we still don't.
Yeah,
have
we
enough
have that in
data.
Blender and 3D software, for visual effects.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
physics data.
But you don't have enough. That's why he said.
Yes.
I'm assuming we don't have enough of it.
In still Marvel,
Yeah.
in released Marvel videos, you can see wrong physics
Yeah.
in
Exactly.
visual effects.
And
It's
I'm
amazing.
guessing, cars, for example, like Tesla and electric cars, they also provide data even when they fail, when they create an accident, when they make an accident, right?
Yeah, of
It's
course.
data.
Yeah.
What
Valuable
happens
data.
when you crash a wall? It's
Yeah.
something the AI needs to learn,
Yeah.
hopefully without anybody injured.
I'm never going to buy a yellow motorbike, by the way, just so you know.
Well, it's fixed now. Thanks to him.
You fixed it? Okay, fair enough.
You can buy it.
I'm colorblind, by the way, so maybe.
So that's how
So it
it
wasn't him
started.
fixing it.
yeah.
I thought you were going to say, I'm never going to buy a Tesla.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got scared for a second.
Was your categorization the 10% that was wrong?
What's the?
No, the yellow motorbike.
Yeah. No, so I gave a yellow motorbike as an example, but it's
Yeah.
not that there was a particular issue with yellow motorbikes.
yeah.
It's
So-
everything. You shouldn't get on the road.
Right.
So do you use AI at home, not at work?
I think like everyone now uses. It's a very by the way, steep redirection because I feel like we're heading somewhere else with a question.
Yeah.
So I feel like everyone is using AI now. Right? I'm asking ChatGPT for advice when I need to troll a friend. I'm asking it to write a song to it. It's not just for job stuff.
Yeah.
And also we talked about Google.
Yeah.
Can Google now really control
Yeah.
governments and public perception?
No.
If you end up using GPT search or Perplexity.
Exactly.
So I think AI was very present in our lives even before, just less in its own face.
Yeah.
And now it just became a part of our day-to-day
The
lives.
interface
Yeah.
updated.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Speaking.
talked about it in the first episode. We said it was the phase where we talked to the product and the product to talk to the AI, and then when we started talking to the AI, that was what it was for me.
What are your kind of go-to applications then? What are the things that you're playing about with at home, in terms of AI?
First of all, I work way too much.
Yeah.
There's no home. I mean, home is working.
If my investors are hearing me. So I think one of my goals for this year is maybe to get some work-life balance. I have a little font the word life in this sense.
Right.
Yeah, but I think when it first came out, I remember I used even before ChatGPT, there was everyone were all about DALL-E, right? Image generation. I remember I used it for just creative stuff. I was I had a dream journal with sometimes I would dream full Netflix movies.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then I was okay, I want now, given that my poor drawing skills will lead me nowhere, I can just describe some images, some scenes
Nice.
from there and see what happens, right?
This is when it was just on Discord, right? I think they started.
Oh,
Hey,
yeah.
that's
it was
Midjourney.
Midjourney.
That's
It was
right.
Midjourney.
Yeah.
That's right.
DALL-E is
I
the
forgot
open
about
AI.
Midjourney.
Yeah.
Now I use ideogram. It's crazy. It's crazy good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but by the way, it's funny that it's been a bit more than 2 years, but now I'm I missed the day. Creative about it.
Yeah, right.
Because now I'm
Because it's crazy.
Remember
fast. AI is
Netscape? We're gonna get there. Remember Netscape? No one uses it now
No, I don't think even ChatGPT knows what Netscape is.
because of Ben.
Some things you don't need to force it to forget, right?
Yeah. But again, just from a day-to-day, I think doing stuff. So I feel we're all done it. You're going to a new place, you instead of now Googling for top 10 recommended spots in Singapore, I'm okay, ChatGPT, what can I do there in 2 days? I'll have a layover in Abu Dhabi. How can I both maximize 24 hours both for business and for
Which is what you would do on Google. Sorry, Effie.
yeah, but with Google, it would just
Take longer. Yeah.
It would take longer. Now I feel we're in a gap where in Google already the results are mastered by SEO, and then
And
the
paid
SEO
for.
itself, it's paid for within the websites. Again, there's a problem because then these models are trained on the same public data, right? So they have the same biases or inaccuracies. But I still think that it's a moment before AI gets cannibalized by these marketing techniques. And right now I would trust more the results that ChatGPT is giving me for recommendations for things to do in Singapore for 2 days than first page on Google results.
100%.
And you know, it's funny because I feel it was just yesterday, everybody was talking that, oh, people are moving to search things from Google in TikTok, right? When you go to Singapore, you would go to TikTok and Instagram and what's the best restaurants to go and
I'm saying, oh my God, we got there.
Yeah. and then it's kind of like it's forgotten. Now you talk about searching those stuff in AI. It was very short-lived, by the way. I think people talked about it like for a year, and then ChatGPT came, and that's it. Everybody is like, oh, ChatGPT has a search function. Let's go there.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to say anything about like three adult white men sitting in one room talking about, maybe about my younger sisters or like siblings. They are using TikTok. I don't know. Like
talking about bias.
Yeah.
You can fix that.
Guys,
let me tell you how to do it correctly.
Yeah, Joe?
So we're coming to the end. Yeah. Let's go around the room like we normally do. It flew by this time, didn't it?
It flew by.
Wow.
Not this time. That makes it sound like every other episode did it.
No, it was fun, but
let's maybe just summarize what our main thoughts have been from the cast.
No, me. Again, this is this episode and talking to Ben about, we talk about shovels and stuff, but I'm trying to always get a macro view of where are we going. Is this the internet or is this Netscape? And this episode is like, we still have a lot in front of us. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of solutions, a lot of problems to solve, a lot of opportunities. It's going to get excited and scary and exciting. That's the great balance of life.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. For me, it's the realization of we're still in the early stage. We're the early adopters. We still have a lot of things to do. And I didn't hear about the unlearning. And the last episode, I didn't even think about analytics between AI and consumers. So every time we're doing this episode, I'm thinking, oh man, there's so many layers to this thing. And it feels like it's just the beginning. Right, and it's super exciting. Like I'm ready for the next episode. I don't know what's gonna happen. What am I gonna learn? But unlearning and biases is something that I watched in Netflix, but just now I understand that it's just started, and you have the competitive advantage because you're doing it in real life scenarios, not in academy. So it's crazy.
I feel like I mostly like talked about what I'm doing, so I don't want to talk about this again. But just like for me, I'm talking constantly to data scientists, right? And I feel like there's been a mutual osmosis process where my very technical team and technical partners have become a bit more like me, storytellers. And for me now, I'm a bit more like, I'm not a data scientist. I can't code for shit. Sorry, pardon my French. But I can carry a conversation and understand the concepts. But it's been just like very fun for me to take a step back, talk about things like in bird's eye view. Get an outsider perspective on like what we do and the challenges ahead. And I think like coming out of it, if I need to, I said like each day I'm waking up on a different side. I want to say like I'm an optimistic person at heart, and I'm coming out optimistic from this conversation.
I think for me, coming out of this conversation as well and having spoken to you about this, I mean, this was something that a nightmare I hadn't even had, like what and you guys are already building a very, very strong platform around it to save it. So just the thought that we have like great minds out there kind of thinking about the future, because it's moving so quick, it's actually very reassuring, I have to say. But Ben, thanks for coming along. It's been really great having you here. And if you enjoyed the episode, like, subscribe. Let us know your comments in the comment section below, and we'll catch you next week for the next episode of AI Unscripted. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.